Wsns-Tv, Virtual Channel 44, is a Telemundo-owned and operated television station located in Chicago, Illinois, United States. The station is owned by the NBCUniversal Owned Television Stations subsidiary of NBCUniversal, as part of a duopoly with NBC-owned and operated station WMAQ-TV. The two stations share studio facilities within the NBC Tower in downtown Chicago's Magnificent Mile district. WSNS's transmitter is located atop the Willis Tower on South Wacker Drive in the Chicago Loop. History. As an independent station. Early history. The station first signed on the air on April 5, 1970. As an independent station, it is currently the third oldest commercial television station on the UHF band in the Chicago market, which signed on in February 1964, and WFLD, which signed on in January 1966. WSNS was originally owned by a consortium of investors including Harrisco Broadcasting and the SNS Television Corporation, from which the station's call letters are derived. The station's transmitter and studio facilities were located on the 97th floor of the John Hancock Center on North Michigan Avenue in the Streeterville neighborhood. The station never disclosed its ownership in any of WSNS formats during regular sign-ons or sign-offs. Initially, Channel 44 maintained an all-news programming format. During the daytime, the station aired an alphanumeric feed of news reports supplied from various wire services set to continuous elevator music, with a commercial banner placed on the lower third of the screen displaying advertisements for businesses such as Continental Bank, Dual Foods and other clients. Every 7 minutes, a four-sided board would be rotated, which was taped live on camera, to display news headlines, traffic reports, sports scores and birthdays of notable celebrities and other personalities. On November 16, 1970, the station moved into a newly constructed studio facility on West Grant Place in the Lincoln Park community's Mid-North District. During these early years, the emergency broadcast system required many stations to shut down in the event of a national emergency. On February 20, 1971, during a national-level EBS message was accidentally activated. WSNS was the only television station to respond correctly and shut down. The all-news format was not particularly successful, and by 1972, WSNS had converted into an entertainment-based independent, running a low-budget general entertainment schedule. Basically, WSNS was the also-ran independent station in the market, running whatever programming that established independence. WGN-TV and WFLD declined to purchase the local rights to. The lineup included some Japanese animated and adventure series, along with low-budget cartoons, older off-network shows, older feature films, and religious programming. WSNS did incorporate a few stronger programs within its schedule for a time during the mid-1970s. It also carried a local early 1960s era showcase of Popeye cartoons hosted by Steve Hart. During the late 1970s, the station had also aired talk shows such as The Merv Griffin Show, The Mike Douglas Show, and Dinah. In addition, WSNS featured Chicago White Sox baseball games for 7 years, as well as showing Chicago Blackhawks hockey. By the early 1980s, the station had lost some of its higher-profile shows to competitors such as WFLD. And TV years. With the station stuck near the bottom of the ratings, WSNS looked at various options to become more viable. One such option was to acquire additional movie rights and drama series, and focus on more adult fare in the manner of what fellow independents WOR-TV in New York City and KTLA in Los Angeles were carrying at the time. However, the station was approached by National Subscription Television, a subsidiary of Oak Industries, about purchasing time on the station to broadcast a planned over-the-air subscription service called Wsns-Tv. Following an effort by the Federal Communications Commission to promote alternative programming efforts on the UHF broadcasting spectrum, such as subscription television services, WSNS filed for and received one of the many subscription television licenses awarded in the United States, 32 of which went into use at one point. The station then began carrying programming from the new Wsns-Tv service. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, most major cities had one or two licensed subscription television operators. To obtain a subscription television license, the station had to provide the FCC with a proposal detailing the programming to be offered. The station required subscribers to have a descrambler installed in the home in order to unscramble the station's signal during Wsns-Tv's programming hours. National Subscription Television subsequently purchased a 24.5% interest in the station from SNS Television Corporation. In September 1980, WSNS continued to maintain a general entertainment programming format until 7 o'clock p.m. on weekdays and on weekends until 5 o'clock p.m., with Wsns-Tv occupying the remaining time periods. In November 1981, WSNS extended its transmission of on-TV programming by 1 hour on weekdays and by 3 hours on weekends. By January 1982, WSNS began carrying Wsns-Tv for 20 hours per day, with an hour of public service programming in order to fulfill FCC requirements for television stations offering a subscription service to broadcast at least 20 hours of unencrypted programming per week. In January 1983, after the FCC repealed the unencrypted programming requirements the previous fall, WSNS began carrying on-TV programming on a 24-hour basis, with the station's signal being scrambled the entire time. During one of the station's license renewal periods in 1982, Monroe Communications Corporation, a group owned by 12 Chicago-area investors, filed a motion with the FCC to contest the license for WSNS, arguing that a television station should not be allowed to use the public airwaves for a subscription fee, nor should the airwaves be used to carry indecent content. This case was ultimately settled. The Wsns-Tv Chicago service ceased operations in July 1985, largely due to the long-awaited entrance of cable television service into the area. Chicago was the last market where Wsns-Tv ended service as a result of protracted debates by the Chicago City Council over how to divide the market for cable distribution in order to avoid a single provider monopolizing service. However, WSNS was hit with additional lawsuits regarding the softcore pornographic films aired on Wsns-Tv, challenges that continued shortly after the service's shutdown. In addition, in February of that year, administrative law judge Joseph Chachkin ruled in favor of Monroe Communications in its effort to strip the SNS national subscription television venture of the WSNS license. Video 44 Inc. appealed the ruling, which resulted in a stay of the judge's order. As a Univision affiliate, by 1985, WSNS decided the subscription format was not commercially viable, at a time when cable television providers were beginning to enter into the Chicago market. On July 1 of that year, after signing a 3-year affiliation agreement with the network, the station became a full-time affiliate of the Spanish international network, which became Univision the following year. WSNS displaced WCIU-TV as the market's an affiliate. That station ran the network's programming daily after 5:00 p.m. and the English-language Stock Market Observer business news block during the daytime hours. WCIU then affiliated with Netspan as a Telemundo station. On October 13, 1988, Wsns-Tv announced that it would switch its affiliation to Telemundo after that station's affiliation agreement with Univision concluded on December 31. 2 months later, on December 16, WCIU, whose contract with Telemundo was set to expire the following month, signed an affiliation agreement with Univision, returning the station to that network after 2 years. The two stations switched affiliations on January 10, 1989. Monroe Communications' attempts to have the WSNS license revoked from the Wsns-Harriscope Ventures possession continued into the early 1990s. In April 1990, a federal appeals court in Washington, D.C. overturned the FCC's 1989 decision to renew Video 44's license to operate WSNS, stating that the agency acted arbitrarily and capriciously in granting it, partly due to it having improperly refused to consider evidence of obscene broadcasts by the station in the early 1980s, requiring the Commission to conduct further proceedings in the dispute. On September 19, 1990, the FCC denied Video 44's application to renew its license. The ruling was upheld on appeal weeks later in a 5-0 decision, and awarded a new construction permit to Monroe Communications. Video 44, Inc. subsequently appealed the decision, although Monroe pledged to provide an expanded array of Hispanic programming aimed at Chicagoans of Mexican and Central American heritage should its license application be approved. Several Hispanic aldermen on the Chicago City Council and other community leaders objected to the FCC's decision, expressing concern that the revocation would deprive Chicago's Hispanic community of a major voice. The FCC denied Video 44's appeal of the license revocation for a second time on July 25, 1991. The dispute between the Monroe and Wsns-Harriscope groups finally ended after 11 years in June 1993, when Monroe Communications reached an agreement with Harriscope to drop its case against Video 44, Inc. in an $18 million settlement awarded to Monroe by Harriscope Broadcasting. On November 9, 1995, Wsns sold a 74.5% controlling interest in the station to Telemundo for $44.7 million, with Wsns retaining a 25.5% stake. The move provided Telemundo with its first major market-owned and operated station and allowed Telemundo to establish itself as a viable Spanish-language network against Univision. When NBC purchased Telemundo in 2002, WSNS became part of the newly enlarged conglomerate, creating Chicago's first commercial television duopoly between two full-power television stations. At the time, WSNS migrated from its longtime studio facility on West Grant Place and merged its operations with NBC-owned and operated station WMAQ-TV at the NBC Tower on North Columbus Drive in the Magnificent Mile. The Grant Place building has since been demolished. The following year, NBC became the sole owner of WSNS when it bought out Wsns' stake in the partnership. Digital television. Digital channels. The station's digital channel is multiplexed, analog to digital conversion. Wsns-Tv shut down its analog signal over UHF channel 44 on June 12, 2009, the official date in which full-power television stations in the United States transitioned from analog to digital broadcasts under federal mandate. The station's digital signal remained on its pre-transition UHF channel 45. Through the use of PSIP, digital television receivers display the station's virtual channel as its former UHF analog channel 44. Wsns-Tv also relocated its main transmitter, was from the John Hancock Center to the Willis Tower. Programming. Sports programming. WSNS obtained the rights to broadcast Major League Baseball games involving the Chicago White Sox in 1973, assuming the rights from WFLD. During this period, the station's White Sox game telecasts were announced by legendary play-by-play announcer Harry Caray. Beginning in 1977, Caray was joined in the broadcast booth by former Boston Red Sox outfielder Jimmy Pearsall as color commentator. The games were produced under an outsourcing agreement between WSNS and WGN-TV, the latter of which produced the telecasts. WSNS carried White Sox games through the 1980 season, after which the telecasts began airing exclusively on WGN-TV for the 1981 season, before it lost the Sox television rights to WFLD. WSNS was also the home of Bo Blues Wrestling, which occasionally featured guest appearances by longtime White Sox announcer Bo Belson to cross-promote the White Sox game telecast that followed the weekly wrestling matches. In 1972, WSNS aired the 1972 Summit Series via satellite, which featured the national hockey teams from Canada and Soviet Union. WSNS also aired Chicago Bulls basketball games from 1973 to 1976, as well as WA hockey games involving the Chicago Cougars from 1972 to 1975. From 1976 to 1980, Channel 44 aired the NHL Game of the Week on Monday evenings. The station began airing road games featuring the Chicago Blackhawks from 1978 to 1980, which was the Blackhawks' local radio broadcaster at the time. WSNS was the last broadcast television station in the market to air Blackhawks games until the 2008-09 season, when WGN-TV acquired the rights to broadcast the team's games. During the 1970s, WSNS aired college basketball games featuring the Purdue Boilermakers, the Indiana Hoosiers, and, in the late 1970s, the DePaul Blue Demons. News operation. WSNS-TV presently broadcasts 9.5 hours of locally produced newscasts each week. The station does not produce any newscasts on Saturdays or Sundays. In addition, the station produces In Folk Chicago, a local version of Telemundo's political discussion program In Folk, which airs Saturday evenings at 4:30 p.m., and Access O Total, a locally produced entertainment and lifestyle program, which airs Fridays and Mondays at 10:30 a.m., and Sundays at 4:30 and 10:30 p.m. WSNS newscasts have long placed second among the Chicago market's Spanish-language stations. However, the station has long maintained a fierce competition with Univision-owned and operated station WGBODT for the highest-rated Spanish newscasts in the market. Newscast History. During the station's initial all-news format, the first program to be added was Underground News, a 10-minute program that premiered at 11:50 p.m. on July 1, 1970, when the Associated Press wire feed began incorporating local news stories. At the time, the banner ad on the lower third of the screen changed to feature an advertisement for Head Imports, with the program being set to music from progressive rock artists such as the Grateful Dead. Most of the stories featured on Underground News focused on the anti-war movement, with a staff consisting of local talent and a team of recent graduates from Southern Illinois University. The station went live during this time. One of the first live-on-tape programs to air was a reformatted Underground News, which was hosted, reported and co-produced by Chuck Collins, a 21-year-old recent political science studies graduate. Eventually, the rights to the program were purchased by Collins and Samuelson, who sold Underground News into syndication, where it aired in more than a dozen cities. Collins would go on to win 7 Emmy Awards during his tenure, NBC News, 2 Peabody Awards, a DuPont Award and the American Bar Association's Silver Gavel Award. In order for WSNS to secure an advertising deal with a local matter store, the station also launched a news program titled Heart of the News, which featured anchor Linda Fuoco reading the news in a provocative manner on a heart-shaped bed. That program was short-lived. However, the program's second anchor, Judith Wright, anticipated such current-day satirical news programs as The Daily Show, as she made funny and ironic commentaries on news stories culled from the Wire during the day. After discontinuing the all-news format in 1972, WSNS would not broadcast news programming again until October 1985, after it became a Spanish international network affiliate, when it launched a new news department and premiered Noticiero 44, a half-hour Spanish-language local newscast airing weeknights at 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock p.m., which were originally anchored by Enrique González del Real and Roberta Nozica, with reporting by David Cordova and Alberto Siles. As the anchors and formats changed over the years, WSNS' prime objective was to produce professional and insightful newscasts comparable to any other local television news outlet in the Chicago market. In 2002, the station expanded its news coverage as part of Telemundo's strategic plans to revamp its owned and operated stations, including its sister stations in New York City, Los Angeles and Miami. On January 15, 2001, it launched a morning newscast called Buenos Dias Chicago that aired from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. but along with sister station KTMD-TV it was cancelled after September 11 attacks. In 2005, WSNS newscasts began to skyrocket in the ratings, earning some of the highest viewership in the history of the current news department. The newscasts, then anchored by Esmeralda Medellin and Vicente Serrano at 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock p.m., were retitled from Noticiero 44 to Noticiero Telemundo Chicago and introduced a new graphics package based on that used by NBCO and AMP, sister WNBC, in New York City. In addition, as some of its fellow Telemundo and AMP-Os had done, WSNS debuted an in-depth news, public affairs program titled En Contexto, which was anchored by Serrano. Later that year, Medellin left the station, while Serrano was laid off due to budget cuts imposed by the network, where the anchor TSITSIK Felix was subsequently promoted to a news anchor position. In 2008, the station attempted to expand its news programming. It debuted Telemundo Chicago por la Mañana, a mid-morning news program that replaced paid programming in its 10:30 a.m. time slot, and was anchored by Felix, who added the program in addition to her existing solo anchor duties on the 5:00 p.m. newscast. Serrano remained host en contexto as well. The station first launched a morning news program in 2007, after Alfonso Gutierrez joined WSNS, anchoring a 5-minute weekday morning update titled En Vivo por la Mañana at 5:55 a.m. In May 2009, Vicente Serrano was laid off by WSNS management due to financial constraints. The station subsequently announced that it would cancel Por la Mañana and replace it with a new entertainment, lifestyle program Acceso Total that September, to be hosted by Nelly Carreño, who would also serve as weather anchor for the weeknight newscasts. At the time, Felix became an evening anchor full-time, helming the 10:00 p.m. newscast solo in addition to the 5:00 edition, becoming the first to regularly solo anchor a newscast in the history of the station's current news department. Felix gained a co-anchor in 2011, when Rolman Vergara joined the station as anchor of the evening newscasts. In November 2012, Felix and Vergara both left WSNS within a day of one another, with Alfonso Gutierrez serving as interim anchor. Felix's departure was surprising, considering her popularity with viewers and the fact that she had been with WSNS in some on-air capacity since May 2001. In August 2013, Edna Schmidt was named co-anchor of the 5:00 and 10:00 p.m. newscasts, only to be fired by the station that October. Schmidt filed a lawsuit against the station in November of that year, claiming that WSNS and its corporate parent NBCUniversal violated the Americans with Disabilities Act by failing to provide Schmidt reasonable accommodation for her alcoholism after she anchored the September 30, 2013 edition of the 10:00 p.m. newscast while intoxicated, leading to her suspension and later dismissal. On September 18, 2014, Telemundo announced that it would expand its early evening newscast to 1 hour, with the addition of a half-hour program at 4:30 p.m. as part of a group-wide news expansion across Telemundo's O and AMP-Os. On December 19, 2014, Ana Belmonte joined the station as co-anchor on the 5:00 and 10:00 p.m. newscasts, with fellow newcomer Marcela Vasquez joining as solo anchor of the 4:30 newscast. The station also implemented a revised version of the Telemundo O and AMP-O standardized graphics and introduced a new set for its newscasts, replacing one that had been in use since 2004. On June 29, 2015, WSNS launched a consumer investigative unit, Telemundo Responder, reporting on local residents who have been victims of fraud, identity theft and scams. The unit is currently headed by Chief Investigative Reporter Alba Mendiola, who joined the station as a general assignment reporter in 2001 and formerly hosted Folk Chicago. On-air staff. Notable former on-air staff: TSITSIK Felix, weather anchor, news anchor; Edna Schmidt, anchor.